The video you're watching now should be a video of me going over what happened in the second presidential debate between Donald J. Trump and Joseph Biden. However, as many of you already know, the debates were in fact canceled, the second debate that is, and instead we had two dueling competing town halls. One with President Trump, I believe on NBC, and one with Joe Biden on ABC. Now, officially, and I want to state this is officially true, President Donald Trump is the one who backed out of the debates. However, what actually happened was the Presidential Debate Commission decided that they were going to change the debate from an in-person debate, as in a good debate, to a virtual debate over Zoom, and this caused President Trump to back out, and Joe Biden just accepted the ruling from the Presidential Debate Commission. So in reality, even though on paper Trump did back out from a Zoom debate, the Presidential Debate Commission changed the rules after the fact. They didn't consult with his medical professionals to even determine if these changes were necessary, and Joe Biden did absolutely nothing to ensure that this debate would happen. On top of that, President Trump and his campaign offered to make the third debate, which is now the second debate, the October 22nd debate, the second debate, and have a debate the week after on October 29th, an offer on which Joe Biden refused. So while officially it is technically true that President Trump backed out of a Zoom debate, they could have had the debates. Joe Biden just wasn't interested in the debates, and I'm not even saying that because Joe Biden is somehow, according to me, afraid to debate Donald Trump. I'm just saying that because probably his consultants were like, look, you're in the lead according to the polls. There's no real reason for you to go into these debates. A wider lead isn't going to make you more president in 2021 come inauguration day, but there's significant risk that you might get caught up in a trap during the debate and your poll numbers, your lead, could shrink. So I do think this was a calculated decision by Joe Biden in response to the Presidential Debate Commission. And I actually do worry that the next debate might not happen because the Presidential Debate Commission has chosen to act outside of the will of medical experts when it comes to President Trump and make their own decisions, which appear to be decisions made on behalf of the Joe Biden campaign. So that's what happened to the debate. Those are my thoughts on this whole situation. I believe that we should have had a debate, but unfortunately, I am not the governor of everything, and we have two competing town halls. And could these town halls not be any more different? You had President Trump doing his town hall on NBC, and it was an incredibly combative experience. I believe that the moderator argued with President Trump for about 10 minutes total of this town hall. She would consistently interject herself into the conversation, and before even an audience member was allowed to ask a question, she was on him for the first segment. And she was on him about stuff that's completely irrelevant, or should be completely irrelevant to this election cycle. For instance, she just kept asking him the idiotic white supremacy question, as if white supremacy is a major issue in the United States of America. Spoiler alert, it is not, but it is rather ridiculous to watch this woman not take yes for an answer when she asked President Trump to denounce white supremacy.
You were asked point blank to denounce white supremacy. In the moment, you didn't. You asked some follow-up questions. Who specifically? A couple of days later, on a different show, you denounced white supremacy.
No,
My question to you is,
you've done this to me and everybody.
Why does it seem like
I denounce white supremacy? Okay,
you did 2 days later.
I've denounced white supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden whether or not he denounces Antifa. I watched him on the same basic show with Lester Holt, and he was asking questions like Biden was a child.
So this is a little bit of a dodge.
Are you listening? I denounce white supremacy.
Look, President Trump has denounced white supremacy and racism multiple times. That is not my opinion. That's not something I'm speculating about. That is an objective fact. In fact, if you were curious about the many times that President Trump has denounced white supremacy, the best possible thing that you can do is go look up the clips of him supposedly not denouncing it, because you find out if you let that clip play, or any of those clips play, just an extra 30 seconds, he absolutely did. The media is consistently lying about this. It's getting nonsensical at this point, but they won't stop doing it. He said repeatedly, he did it by name in this town hall, that he denounces it, and then this woman kept asking him, and she kept saying, isn't it weird how you're hesitating to denounce this, despite the fact that he did not hesitate to denounce it.
I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again. Every time, in fact, my people came, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy.
He literally looked dead in the camera, looked this woman dead in her face, and denounced it multiple times on the stage, and yet that is still not going to be good enough. In fact, we had other instances where journalists who supposedly are supposed to be journalists said that President Trump didn't denounce white supremacy, or he just, for the first time, denounced white supremacy, only to discover that they said the exact same thing going back 3 years ago. Of course, I'm talking specifically about Jim Acosta, who recently in 2020 said that Donald Trump finally denounced this, despite the fact that he's tweeted out publicly in 2017 that Donald Trump finally denounced this. He's denounced this multiple times. This is not an issue. The white supremacist violence that's plaguing our country is nowhere near the level of left-wing violence that's plaguing our country right now, specifically within the last 4 or 5 months. You notice those riots destroying our cities? There's not a lot of white supremacist violence going on in those riots. Sure, there are some instances where white supremacists did instigate violence, some, but that pales in comparison to the hundreds of left-wing Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots that we've seen over the past couple of months. And I know the media likes to blow up the individual instances where it turns out that one guy who happens to be on the right decided to instigate some of the violence, but I think what's far more important is the large masses of people who are just waiting for a chance to burn, loot, rob, and potentially kill people because they disagree with them politically. And while it's been proven time and time again, despite the fact that the media will not take yes for an answer, that President Trump will by name denounce white supremacy and racism and all of the evil bad things that the media are pretending that Trump is in favor of and not listening to him when he denounces it specifically, I think it's way more troubling that Vice President Joe Biden, the guy who is very likely to be the president of the United States come 2021, again, there's only 2 candidates that have a chance of winning this, will not denounce Antifa, and worse, actually provides cover for the organization Antifa by claiming that they are an idea, not an organization. They have meetings, they gather together, they train together, they share an ideology, and they commit violence and acts of terror in groups, and they've actually assassinated multiple Trump supporters in the street in cold blood, and Joe Biden's like, well, this is just an idea. 100 days of rioting in Portland caused by Antifa? Just an idea. Antifa running a radical, even more far-left mayor against Ted Wheeler in Portland? No, that's just an idea. No. Doesn't exist. It's not real. Don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe the consistent violence you've seen on the streets. I'm Joe Biden. I'm running for president, and I'm gonna lie directly to your face. Now, while this was an annoying part of the town hall, and this is an annoying narrative that I keep having to rebuke over and over again when I'm trying to cover the election in a fair and honest way, I do think that President Trump basically answered 0% of the questions that he was asked at the town hall. He was ready to go, and he was ready to go with the questions from the moderator. He was combating with her, and that was all good stuff. But when it came to the questions from the audience, President Trump just shifted to his talking points, which is one of the reasons I don't like these kind of events where audience members are bringing their questions forth, because these aren't really that well suited to be broad policy discussions. That's just not what you're going to get out of this. This is really more of a show to make it seem like the citizens are participating in the democracy that's actually a republic. But Trump did answer one crucial question. He did say he would accept the results of the election.
They talk about the peaceful transfer, right? They spied on my campaign and they got caught. And they spied heavily on my campaign. And they tried to take down a duly elected sitting president. And then they talk about, will you accept a peaceful transfer? And the answer is yes, I will. But I want it to be an honest election. And so does everybody else.
And he wants to have a peaceful transition of power. He also brought up that the Biden-Obama administration actually did spy on his campaign. I know it's the Obama-Biden administration, but honestly, I don't want to reshoot this part and put that in. I just want this to be clean with no awkward explanations, even though I'm definitely going to leave this clip in. But the Obama-Biden administration actually spied on his campaign. The Democrats have been campaigning against the results of the 2016 election, and they've also been trying to get rid of the Electoral College and change all of the institutions that allowed President Trump to win his election. They've been pushing for censorship online. So it is pretty funny that President Trump finally did accept this, but he did point out at the same time that the Democrats did not accept the election. They've been rioting in the streets. They've been committing acts of political violence against Trump supporters. And I'm not just talking about over the course of the last few months. And they're the ones complaining about Trump not accepting the results. Now, while the Trump town hall was lively, it was energetic, and above all else, it was combative between President Trump and the moderator, the Joe Biden town hall that was happening at the same time was the exact opposite. I mean, you would think that legitimate journalist George Stephanopoulos, who is a legitimate journalist, he's not a Democratic Party operative, but you would think, based on the way that he conducted this interview with Joe Biden, the way that he hosted this town hall, that he somehow got his way into the media by working for one of the major presidents over the past 20 or 30 years. I mean, you would think that George Stephanopoulos was somebody who made his bones working in the Clinton administration the way that he was puffing up Joe Biden. Now, you would think that because that's obviously the case. George Stephanopoulos, not a journalist, he worked for the Clinton administration. That's how he has his way into media, and the media treat him like an objective journalist, even though he is in fact a Democratic Party operative. That's why I kind of laughed when people were talking about how one of the questioners in the Biden town hall was actually somebody who used to write speeches for Barack Obama. It's like, you don't need to have somebody in the audience be that person. They did have that. That did happen because the guy hosting the event is a Democratic Party operative. This whole thing is set up and rigged for Joe Biden to do well in it. And credit where credit is due. Joe Biden has been criticized extremely heavily for stumbling and bumbling his way through these events, but in this one, he was pretty on point. He wasn't that bumbly. He was pretty solid, he was personable, and he was likable. And I know people want to pretend that Joe Biden is as unlikable as Hillary Clinton. I know they want to pretend that he's not charismatic, but that's not the case. If you're banking on Joe Biden being so unlikable that he'll torpedo himself the same way that Hillary Clinton did, you are not going to get that. I watched this right after the Trump one. I noticed the bias in the way that the town hall was conducted, but I also noticed that Joe Biden still has some of that charisma left, and that definitely rubbed off on the viewer of these town halls. Now, as far as takeaways from the Biden town hall, there really isn't anything of substance to go over. A lot of people are making hay about this questioner asking Joe Biden about his "you ain't black" comments, but honestly, this guy was introduced as a progressive, and he came off as a progressive when asking this question. And what I mean by came off as a progressive is incredibly, unparalleledly, even though that's not a word, weak in the way that he asked this question. As we know, more Bernie Sanders supporters voted for Hillary Clinton in the general election in 2016 than did Hillary Clinton primary voters that went for Barack Obama. She actually had more of her people go to John McCain in that general election, because the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and specifically the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, are defined by their weakness among all other things. That's the dominant feature. So this wasn't a really big moment. Joe Biden kind of handled the question all right. It didn't matter because he had his buddy Stephanopoulos to deflect and help him out in that question. And the only other thing that I think had any value during this was the Supreme Court question, because Joe Biden is still not answering whether or not he will pack the Supreme Court.
What is the nomination? What I wanted to do, George, if I had answered the question directly, then all the focus would be on what's Biden going to do if he wins, instead of on, is it appropriate what is going on now?
He seems to be saying that if they confirm Barrett, then he will, which is kind of weird because strategically you want to threaten that in order to get Barrett not confirmed.
Well, right now, it looks like they're going to have a vote around Halloween. So if they vote on it before the election, you are open to expanding the court?
I'm open to considering what happens from that point on.
But I think Joe Biden has moved in that direction of packing the Supreme Court. I think the progressives have yanked him in that direction, which I find absolutely hilarious, because these are the people who talk about Trump destroying all the norms. But ever since Trump's gotten elected, we have to get rid of the Electoral College. We have to change the Senate to make it not the Senate. We have to make it proportional, even though it's designed to be equivalent representation of the states. And we have to make DC a state and other things a state, so Democrats can get more senators in Washington in order to forward their agenda. So even though President Trump is supposedly throwing out all our election norms, we're supposed to just accept that we have to change all of our election norms and now change the norm of the Supreme Court that has been that way for, I believe, over 150 years, because President Trump is the one affecting our norms. Right. Now look, you could say a lot of things about the way that the Republican Party acted after the death of Antonin Scalia, and a lot of them will be true. First and foremost, the Republicans definitely lied. They pretended like it was important to get the American people's voice in the next presidential election to determine who would be the Supreme Court nominee. That was nonsense from the jump. The reason that the Republicans were holding up that appointment to the Supreme Court is because the Republicans held the Senate and they didn't want to let Antonin Scalia be replaced by Barack Obama, especially when key decisions like DC versus Heller, McDonald versus Chicago, which affirmed an individual's right to keep and bear arms, were decided on a 5-4 basis. That's why the Republicans actually held it up, because they held the Senate, and although the president can appoint Supreme Court justices, the Senate must confirm them. But what you can't say is that the Republicans somehow cheated in order to prevent Merrick Garland from getting to the Supreme Court. They controlled the Senate. They won those elections legitimately, and the Senate has the power to determine whether or not a president's appointments will make it to the court. And they don't have to have hearings for a president's appointment if they know for a fact that they're not going to confirm them, especially if they know for a fact that they're not going to confirm them until after the election. So the Republicans were fully within their rights. They weren't breaking the Senate in order to do that. And now, in this election, they also still hold the Senate, so they are fully within their rights, knowing that they like the nominee that the president put forward, in confirming that person going into this election. Now, I know you may not like that if you're a Democrat, especially if you're of the belief that pieces of legislation that cannot get passed either by the states or in the halls of Congress should just be handed down to us by this super legislative body that is called the Supreme Court. But those are the rules, and the Republicans just played the rules as they are currently constructed to their best advantage, and they got fantastic results. They got lucky for sure, but they got fantastic results for their side. But if you change the rules, if you pack the court, something that hasn't been threatened since the days of FDR, you are changing the rules in order to benefit you because you lost. You are compromising the legitimacy of the institution that is the Supreme Court in order to win a partisan victory over the other side. So Joe Biden needs to answer this question, and I know he said he would answer it eventually before Election Day, but I find it kind of strange how we can't have a Supreme Court justice confirmed before Election Day because people have already started voting.
But once an election begins, by implication, it is inconsistent with the constitutional principles, in my view. You get disagreement among scholars on this, but I believe it's inconsistent when millions of people already voted to put someone on the court. I think it should have been held.
But Joe Biden won't answer this question until it's closer to Election Day, even though, as he loves to say, people have already started voting. Now, I think the answer to this question is that they are seriously considering doing this. The Democrats do not like to lose, the progressive agenda does not like to lose, and losing their ability to force change upon the American people through the judiciary branch is something that they are seriously stressed about because they've used that as a tool to forward their priorities for decades in this country. So yes, it is outrageous that Biden is not answering that question before the election, but when you have a media more interested in getting him elected and providing cover for him than actually interrogating him about the things that he will do once he gets into power, these are the results that you get. Trump would never be able to get away with this, and people would be panicking at the suggestion that Trump might pack the court in order to get decisions that he likes, even though that's exactly what the progressive wing and the Joe Biden campaign is signaling that they are open to doing. So yeah, those are my thoughts on these town halls. If I had to rate them on a scale from 1 to these town halls sucked and we should have had a debate, I think you guys know where I fall in that rating system that I just invented, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, you know what to do. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media links. They are linked in the description of this video. Support me via the support links. Till next time.